Greetings all, and welcome to another Tale of Woe. I'm your storyteller Tim, and today we once again delve into the adventures in Ravenloft. When we last left the group, Nuru had just been resurrected after a pretty nasty fight with a evil tree ent and a bunch of very nasty scarecrows. But this was when the story got really insane because they were heading off to the Amber Temple, which is one of the dungeon crawls, as it were, in the Curse of Strahd. And the thing about the Amber Temple, much like everything else in Ravenloft, because everything in Ravenloft sucks. Everything wants you dead. It's very difficult to find something that's sort of positive about being in Ravenloft. But the Amber Temple is so damn dangerous, especially for a group, with semi-experienced characters and players and semi-experienced players. Because one of the problems when you're inside the Amber Temple is you cannot touch anything. Not only are the monsters out there trying to kill you, but literally the walls of this place, or at least some of the artifacts in this place. You touch them, it's essentially instant death. And one of the reasons why they were going there was mostly due to the character of Selena finding out that this place was actually a massive library and her thirst for knowledge, and also attempting to try and find a way to, potentially defeat Strahd or whatever. So that was why they were deciding to head to the Amber Temple. So they managed to make their way up the mountain. They got themselves some cold gear. The trip up the hill was mostly uneventful. They did actually manage to. One of the things when you're doing the Curse of Strahd is that at the beginning of the storyline, you actually draw. You do like a tarot reading from a deck called the Taroka deck. And the way that works is that when you draw specific cards, it basically almost makes it like a choose your own adventure or like a randomization of the storyline. Because specific artifacts and items that you need to complete the story, it actually tells you where these items are to be located. And one of the items was actually located in a tower on the way up to the Amber Temple, namely the Sun Sword, the blade that once belonged to Strahd's brother, and that you actually need to defeat him. So they did actually manage to acquire that on the way up the hill. And I say, that was an uneventful moment in the upcoming sessions, and from what's coming up, you can tell I'm sort of stumbling over my words here, because this was one of those stories. It is really a tale of whoa. It involved a lot of death, and somewhat my fault as well, because I decided to introduce a deck of many things into the game, which wasn't part of the game initially, but it both helped out in the game and also provided a bit of a problem. But I'm always a fan of random effects, and ever since I had heard about Dungeons and Dragons, the one thing that I've always wanted to do was throw in a deck of many things, or use a deck of many things, just to see what would happen. So this was where that item got introduced. But the deck of many things wasn't what screwed them over. What screwed them over, for the most part, at least in this initial part of the story, was Nuru and her inability to not touch things, as rogues are wont to do. When they want, when they see something they want, they just go, "Ooh, I would take that. I would put my hands upon it." At this stage, I believe they were all level 6, possibly level 8. So I'm not 100% sure. I know Nuru had multi-classed into rogue and fighter. She'd gone down the Eldritch Knight path, I believe, at this stage. And everyone else had Geeve had just gone straight down the fighter path, Selena had gone straight down the warlock path, and Wallflower had gone straight down the druid path. So everyone was single class except for Nuru, who had multi-class. But anyway, regardless. The biggest problem with the Amber Temple is apart from, like I was saying, the enemies, because the enemies in this place are absolutely insane as well. This place is filled to the brim with flame skulls. Now, if you don't know what flame skulls are what they sound like. They're skulls that shoot flame that hover around. But these things cast magic spells. They can shoot magic missiles, but the one thing they can fire is fireball, which is an absolutely ridiculous spell. And in the halls of this place, you're encountering three of them at a time. So if you have a party coming through narrow corridors, you're going to get absolutely destroyed by fireballs. And that what was happening. They'd stick their head through a door, they'd have an encounter. They manage to take these things out. They get absolutely destroyed. They close the door and then have a short rest, which was an hour. The funny thing about flame skulls is if you don't hit them with holy water, they come back to life after an hour. So they weren't making any progress. They just kept on getting absolutely destroyed by these flame skulls. Eventually, they managed to navigate their way through. They managed to get to the central hub, because essentially the way the temple is laid out, you've got a big grand hall, and there's like arrow slits all down these different areas, and then there's a set of rooms on the ground floor, and then a balcony and a set of rooms across the top floor, and then there's this big ass statue at the end. There's a couple of vaults, and then there's secret stuff behind that. Spoilers. So when they get into the central hall, the statue immediately starts firing shit at them because there is a magic user inside the head of this statue. So they have to kill this thing inside the statue, which they managed to do. And also at this point they found someone that had been trapped in the temple. This was a character that was in there that I modified in order to get the deck of many things in. Essentially, this was the apprentice to a wizard. There's actually a wizard you find his body burnt to cinders in the first room where you come across the flame skulls. If you touch his staff, you immediately become possessed of his personality. Selena actually touched the staff first and became possessed of his personality, or gained one of his personality traits, which, funnily enough, was the same as her personality trait anyway, so no change. That was a win. And she gained a Staff of Frost, which, not a bad item, especially when dealing with all these flame skulls. When they came across the apprentice, he had basically lost his mind and had nothing on him except the deck of cards, because he had drawn Ruin, which had caused him to lose all of his items. He had drawn Idiot, which had caused him to lose his intelligence, and he had drawn Donjon, which was why he was trapped in the Amber Temple. And he actually got killed during the fight with the statue, and then Give, searching his body, came across the deck of many things, and immediately decided to draw from the deck. And I was like, ho, here we go. Fun times ahead. First card that he draws, Fool. He loses 10,000 XP and has to... he declares he was going to draw 2 cards, sorry. Right. Fool loses 10,000 XP and has to draw an additional card. The second he draws, Sun, which gives him 50,000 XP and a wondrous magic item of the DM's choosing. And considering they didn't really have any way to get the loot out of this place, I gave him a portable hole. So that was his second dimensional item, because the first item that he had was the Bag of Devouring, which would come into play later on in the story. And then the third thing he draws, Gem, which gives him 50,000 gold worth of gems, either 25, 2,000, or 51,000 value gems. So for a first draw, not bad. It was beautiful. It's like, you lose 10,000, you gain 50,000. So I think at this point he actually jumped to like level 12. He was like way ahead of the curve. So now they had their indoor elephant tank, as it were, for the party. Their next encounter they came across was a group of Barovian witches with brooms of animated attack. They're all invisible, but again, that fight was nothing for them now, especially since they had Give with his now boosted ability, and he was also wielding the Sun Sword, so he was on fire at this stage. One thing about the Amber Temple is it's actually a prison for all different sorts of dark powers. And these dark powers are contained within amber sarcophagi. The entire temple is made out of like amber stone, hence the name. But there's these special sarcophagi, and inside these things, they basically have like a core of like a black orb inside them. And if you get near them, they start whispering to you to touch them. And the first room that they enter into, Nuru puts her hand on one of the statues, and it basically says, "Do you accept my gift?" And Nuru, being one who likes shiny things, says yes. Now, in the book, what it says to do is, if they say yes, the person must succeed on, I think it's a DC 12 wisdom save. I don't think it's charisma. I think it's a wisdom save. If they fail, their alignment instantly changes to evil and they become an NPC under the DM's control. So you fail that check, it's instant player death. Just this is like my first thing that I realized, that in Barovia things were not messing around in this place. So Nuru was dead. That was it. That was game over for her. But again, I liked the character a lot, and there was good storylines tied up in this character. So it also says that I can allow the player to continue playing as the character, but being evil if I wanted to. So I pulled her aside. We left the table for a few minutes, and I let her know what had happened, and we came back to the game. The rest of that session, so Nuru was still playing, but she was now evil Nuru, and so she began scheming the demise of the rest of the party. And I said that she also had, oh, that was it. Sorry, the first thing that she picks up, because each of the sarcophagi, each of the dark powers gives you a boon or a special ability. It has like a positive effect and a negative effect. What was given to her from this dark power was a year-long mind blank. So essentially no one can read her mind, and her mind cannot be influenced by other things, essentially. Unless she chooses to. But the side effect was that her eyes melt out of her head. She can still see, but she just has blank sockets where her eyes once were. And the way that I described it was that she puts her hand on the sarcophagus and she starts feeling something wet coming down her cheeks. She feels fine. She feels a little bit more hostile towards the rest of the group, but her face is now wet. And at the time, she was actually wearing a modified set of goggles of the night. These were rose-tinted glasses with smiley faces that she got from the toy maker. Because the toy maker in town, Blinsky, he was one of the people that believed in the Burgermeister's idea of keeping everyone happy, happy, happy. So one of the items he had commissioned, or had been commissioned to create, were rose-tinted glasses that allow you to see through the dark. So he'd made these weird glasses. So they were the glasses that Nuru was wearing at the time. And so when she turned to look at the rest of the group, they just saw this black goo running down her cheeks. And Selena lifts up the goggles and sees that she doesn't have any eyes. And she's like, "What? I'm fine." So she's like, "What are you doing? Get out of here. It's fine." No, like she's just playing it off like nothing was wrong. Everyone else was pretty well freaked out at this stage, but they knew that Nuru was one of those weird sort of characters, and they'd seen her talking to herself quite a bit, knowing that was Willie, of course. But anyway. For the rest of the session, it basically involved them checking out the rooms in different parts of the temple, and they also managed to find the two components. They only searched, I believe, the right side of the map. They hadn't gone to the left yet. So they cleared out the whole right hand side, and they found the control medallion to a shield guardian, which Give had fitted himself with. So now they have double the tank, double your pleasure. And they also found the secret entrance behind the statue with the assistance of a wand of secrets that Wallflower had discovered. I believe that was actually in one of the earlier rooms right near the entrance. She fog clouded into a room, found a magic wand, and then fog clouded back out. So using their abilities quite well in that respect. Um, that night was when things went bad. We stopped the session there, and then we had a couple of weeks break because we were kind of busy doing real life things. But when we came back, Nuru had discussed with me, and I'd also discussed with her, a potential resolution or something that could occur with this situation, with her becoming evil, and also a potential way for her to come back. But it was incredibly risky. But she was willing to play along. Essentially, what happened is that once they were behind the statue, there's a massive library, and Selena didn't want to leave, so they set up camp and had a long rest. During Nuru's watch, her and Pity, because Piddlewink at this stage had actually bonded with her, so her and Pity were partners in crime, quite literally and figuratively. And Pity was able to was assisting her with this attack. While Give was sleeping, he wakes up and he can't see anything, and he feels small hands being rummaging all the way through his clothes, and you could hear Nuru giggling off into the temples and just cackling like a madwoman. And then he can't get this thing off his head. What has occurred is that while he was asleep, Nuru has grabbed his bag of devouring and shoved it over his head. Now, for those of you who don't know, a bag of devouring is a bag of holding, but rather than a dimensional space that stores things, the dimensional space that it contains is the mouth or the stomach of a trans-dimensional being. And after 24 hours, it eats everything. And if you put a person inside of it, it draws them inside of it. So Give is struggling for his life. It could have potentially killed him. Fortunately, he was able to, with his strength, he was able to wrestle the bag off his head. What probably would have happened, though, because he also had the portable hole on him, if it had have eaten down that point, it would have just and caused the dimensional suck hole that happens when you put two bags of holding inside of each other, which potentially could have killed Wallflower, who was asleep beside him at this stage. Did not happen, fortunately, for the rest of the group. So it was a risky play, but went well. Now, what was going on with Piddywink and the Small Hands is that he was relieving Give of the deck of many things. And he disappeared into the night as well. What Nuru did is becoming evil and knowing what these things are and what they were capable of. And she also had cracked the passwords. They'd actually worked out what the passwords were to get into each of the rooms with the sarcophagus. But regardless, she ran through the entire temple and hit almost all of the sarcophagi and basically supercharged herself with all of these evil gifts. The first thing she gained was the power of flight via skeletal wings. The drawback being that if she doesn't eat dirt or bones for 24 hours, she would actually die. But she now could fly. She had skeletal wings sticking out of her back. The next thing she gains is the ability to cast suggestion, but it also gives her an extra finger on each of her hands. So she's slowly beginning to mutate into this evil, evil creature. The fourth thing she picks up, she can cast Lightning Bolt 3 times, but one side of her face becomes completely paralyzed, so she becomes almost like she's had a stroke, essentially. So she's becoming even more disfigured. The next one she picks up is the ability to raise the dead, and her eyes now glow yellow. So she's now got yellow light coming out from behind her rose-tinted happy glasses. Next thing she picks up, she gets an extra eye and the ability to spider climb, basically like this spider spirit. So now she has a third glowing eye in the center of her forehead, goggles on with glowing eyes behind that. The next one she picks up, when she dies, she'll reincarnate up to 3 times. So she can die 3 times and come back to life 3 times, each time going through the reincarnation spell ability, and after the 3rd time, all of her teeth will fall out. Really weird things. The next one she picks up, she gets +4 charisma up to a maximum of 22, which bumped her charisma way, way up. I think that actually bumped her up to 20 at this stage. Next one, True Sight, and her eyes become starry void. So now she has a yellow glowing starry void in the center of her forehead, and the ones that you can't see basically remaining the same. The next one she picks up, for 10 days, she gets the effect of a Belt of Fire Giant strength. So now she's incredibly beefed up. And the last, the next one, again, this list is quite substantial. And she was doing this while they were all rallying themselves. Next one was like Black Fur is over her body, and she gains 30 extra hit points. Next one after that, she can cast Finger of Death 3 times. Now, at this level, Finger of Death is like an instant kill ability. And if you kill them with it, they come back to life as a zombie. So that was one of the things she got. And then after that, she gains the ability to speak Infernal and can summon 2 Hellhounds at will, essentially. And whenever she speaks Infernal, smoke comes out of her pores. So she's got inky black fur over her body, eyes glowing starry voids, bone wings coming out of her back, extra finger on her hands, and yeah, just absolutely insane. And because she was possessed of the abilities of all of these different dark powers, she renamed herself Legion, because she was all of the dark powers at this stage. And then she set about trying to murder the rest of the party. And this was a fight of their lives. Winter Splinter was difficult. The Scarecrows were difficult. But when you're fighting a super-powered, god-enhanced party member that can reincarnate 3 times, especially, and has 3 abilities of Finger of Death, 3 lightning bolts, and can raise people from the dead, and just, yeah, it was going to be absolutely insane. The fights went actually pretty well for the party, because of that Shield Guardian that they picked up. If they didn't have the Shield Guardian, they would have been absolutely gone. But because they had that Shield Guardian, they were able to survive. For the most part, I will say anyway. When I say survive, they were able to survive longer than they would have done. So basically, the entire party during this fight gets completely wiped out with all of Nuru's abilities, especially with her reincarnation ability coming back to life each time. And eventually, this fight went on for, I think, maybe 2 or 3 hours in real life. It basically was like the entire session. We came back after this holiday, and this entire session was just them dealing with Legion Nuru as Legion in the party. And the fight, like I said, it was an epic fight for the ages, but Wallflower was out of action, Selena was out of action, and Give was nearly out, I think, or I can't recall what order, but I know there was at least one of them still alive. It would have had to have been Give. Again, I remember a lot of facts of this one here, especially what's coming up, because it was even more epic than what had come before. But basically what had happened is that Pity had been nowhere to be seen for this entire fight. And as Nuru is getting ready to put the final death blow on the party, you see... Oh, no, I remember now. It wasn't that. It was actually Guy was about to put the final death nail in Nuru. Yes, that was it. Now that I remember. Sorry, yeah. But again, it was like a one-on-one. The other 2 party members were out of it. But it was because Guy was about to, coup de grace. He had the sun sword up, and they said that you see Pity just appear up on the balcony, clutching the deck of many things in his hands. And I say that Pity draws 4 cards, and this was where the play happened, what I hoped would occur, and I didn't think it would go quite this well, but this is what happened. The first card he draws, Jester. He gains 10,000 XP and has to draw 2 extra cards, which means his total draws for this session is going to be 6 draws. which I thought was going to basically be, him fucked. So this was almost going to be campaign over unless Give could probably get the other people raised back up. But whether or not they would want to raise Nuru back up would be another question, because she was still possessed of this evil Legion creature. But anyway, second card he draws, Comet. If he beats the next fight solo, the next encounter he has to deal with solo, he gains a level. Now, Pity's an NPC, but because he's gained all this XP, I was going to have to modify his character after this. But that was the second thing that he drew, which was when probably the most funny thing I've ever seen occurred. The next card, Skull. Skull summons an avatar of death to fight the person that drew the card. This being has half the hit points of the person that summoned it. Pity has 10 hit points. This avatar of death has 5 hit points. So I pause the game at this point and say, okay, so Pity is now going to roll for initiative, as is this avatar of death. Pity wins the initiative roll. One thing that Pity has as an ability is called Ambush. He gets advantage on the first round of combat if that thing hasn't fought yet. The avatar of death hasn't fought, so he gets advantage on the attack. I attack with his dart. He'd had a replacement dart at this stage. He rolls a natural 20 with advantage on this hit. So, and the dart does 1d4 plus, I think 1d4 plus 2 damage. So this is doing 2d4 plus 2 damage. It only has 5 hit points. Pity one hit kills the avatar of death. He gains another level. So he's now boosted himself up even more. The next card he draws, Balance. Pity is neutral evil. He now becomes neutral good. So his alignment shifts. He was actually on Nuru's side at this point. He didn't want to see Nuru get wiped out. That was what he drew the cards for, was to try and prevent Nuru from going out. But because he's drawn Balance, he's now a good guy. Which, when the card that I wanted to come up finally did come up, which was, coincidentally, the next card, Moon. He gets D3 wishes. Pity gets 2 wishes. So, I say, as he draws this card, you see Pity close his eyes, and then time rewinds itself. The wish that I made Pity make was that Nuru hadn't touched the statue. So, when the thing that made her turn evil in the beginning didn't happen. Everything else that had occurred in the session, them raiding through the entire temple and whatever else, had happened. But she wasn't evil anymore. She wasn't Legion. Basically, the game reset back to the night before the attack on Give happened. And then the last card he drew was Key, which gave him a magical item. And so I gave him I think it was the Rod of Healing, because they didn't actually have a healer at this stage. So I gave Pity the Rod of Healing and made it shrink down to the size of a club. So we had the Club of Healing, which led to a lot of hilarious events throughout the game. Whenever someone was hurt, you just walk up and just smack them on the back of the head. But he'd only used one wish. And so everyone now had this split memory paths. Essentially what I said was that they all awake from this really intense nightmare, and they've all got damage on themselves. No one is dead. Everyone is sort of badly injured from the fight. But Nuru is not dead. The Shield Guardian is still alive, and Pity now has this magical glowing stick and a glowing gem in the center of his forehead because he has an additional wish that he hasn't made yet. And he doesn't have he doesn't know what he's wishing for. But this was one of the most ridiculous things that had ever happened in a game for me before. This is probably one of the most epic runs of luck that had ever happened in a game. It was both an incredible run of bad luck for Nuru failing that check, but then managing to get this deck of many things into the game, especially for Geeve. I mean, Geeve getting bumped all the way up to 12th level while the rest of the group was still, back down at 8th. And then having all this other stuff happen to Pity to basically save the fucking game, because that was really game over at that point. Because again, they could have got everyone resurrected, but the whole story was, potentially, really off the rails. Not that it was really ever on, but this is, off the rails and over a ravine, into the rifts of into the rifts of mists of Ravenloft. But yeah, that was how a deck of many things saved my campaign and created one of the most epic alternate timelines in the history of this game. So, just marinate on that for a while, and I'll see you all next time for the next Tale of WHOA.